How to be a Canadian. Follow these steps and you too can be like us, eh? Step 1. Learn the different regions of Canada.
Still working on the rigs?
Nah.
I got laid off.
If you don't get to work, you're not coming to the fur, you greasy blue-noser.
There's always next year.
Dude, I got the munchies. Can we get sushi?
Hey, I gonna spill the mustard on my favorite shirt.
Pay tribute to our fallen soldiers by gently stabbing yourself with a poppy.
Oh, sweet Timbits. Oh, great. You guys ate all the good ones again.
Oh, you should really take off that poppy.
This poppy? No, I can't take this poppy off. You see, our forefathers, they sacrificed their lives for the rights and for the freedoms that we enjoy to this day. The least I can do is wear this one little flower for...
Remember the golden age of Canadian television.
Yo, can I trade you ketchup for all dress?
Sure.
The North American house hippo is found throughout Canada and the eastern United States.
How come I've never seen a house hippo?
Hippos
Have you seen a house hippo?
Creatures and are rarely seen.
Learn Canadian jargon. Looney, Toonie, 2426, the States, Giver, Keener, Hoser, Butte, Took, Yukon, Mickey, Pop, Toboggan, Stag, Hydro, Homo, Milk, Double, Carburetor. Eh? Try your hardest to push the middle out of a toonie.
She'll go. Give me a try, eh?
Cool. Wait, isn't defacing money illegal?
Love your Canadian celebrities.
Oh, Justin, you're so dreamy. Everything about you is so hot. Your hair, your tattoo, your powerful elbows.
Susie, come quick. The Bare Naked Ladies and Gordon Lightfoot are on George Stroumboulopoulos. Wait a second, what are you doing?
Just doing my social studies. I'll come join you on the Chesterfield.
Respect the Canadian legal system.
Hey there, fellas.
Oh, shoot, it's the RCMP.
That graffiti there is in direct violation of Section 42B of the Official Languages Act. English and French, please.
Merci.
Bonne nuit, boys.
Recognize that whether you love or hate hockey, you'll probably get drunk because of it.
And that's why I'm wearing green in this beautiful hat.
Oh, they're talking about John's clothing. Drink.
You winter kids. When you
Drink.
see a guy along the Sedin, and we gotta go quick, we got a minute 45.
Oh, they're running out of time. Drink.
It's a gimmick. It's the same thing as
Oh, yeah, he's doing the piano thing. Drink, that's two.
the same thing as a football game. It's a gimmick.
It's two.
When you don't want a dog to kill chickens to hang a chicken around its neck, you'll never touch it again.
Everyone finish your Mickeys.
What? I thought we were drinking 2 6s.
Learn the Canadian version of American things. MTV, Much Music, 90210, Degrassi, Macy's, The Bay, Target, Zellers, NFL, CFL, Hanson's, The Moffat, Subway, Mr. Sub, Bacon, Canadian Bacon, Kanye, Drake, Mr. Rogers, Mr. Dressup, New York, Toronto, George Bush, Stephen Harper, Donald Trump, and Kevin O'Leary. Take advantage of free health care.
Hey, did you hear they made O Canada gender neutral?
What, you mean like chicks can sing it now?
How's she look, boys? Get on and give her, bud.
So it looks like you're already covered for your cast, your CT scan, and the new titanium leg. The only remaining balance is $17.38 for the crutches.
$17? Sorry, but I'll be speaking to my local MP about this.
Understand the metric system half of the time.
Welcome back to Who Wants to Win a Million, eh? Are you ready for your final question?
Yeah, let's give her.
For 1 million Canadian dollars, how much do you weigh in kilograms? Is it A, 40, B, 80, C, 65, D, 200?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know kilograms.
Now remember, you can earn a bonus lifeline by listening to one Nickelback song in its entirety.
I think I'm gonna walk.
Never accept substitutes for real maple syrup.
Whoa, you're not going to use that crap, are you?
Yeah? Tastes nothing like the real thing. Whatever, it's all the same.
Mr. Russell, that's the third time this month. I'm gonna have to write you up for contraband.
Can't you just give me a warning?
Sorry.
20 hours of community curling? That's like my whole weekend.
And?
That's so racist. he doesn't have enough money for a fucking. He doesn't have $17.
Winja Santa yan. Anawa chwanta daha. Manapa guam. Kalim hai.
I just walk away. I'm using here. For the life, running for my life. I'm in my I'm done playing. Up like this, or no animals seem interested in the bait. I don't know.
C65 D. Now remember, you can earn a bonus lifeline by listening to one Nickelback song in its entirety. I think I'm gonna walk. Whoa, you're not gonna use that crap, are you? It's nothing like the real thing. Mr. Russell, that's the third time this month. I'm gonna have to write you up in contraband. Just give me a warning. 20 hours of community curling? What seems to be the matter? What's wrong with your
Wait, what happened?
I swear.
I don't know what.
His pootan. He said his pootan is cold, no one cooked it.
How to be a Canadian. Follow these Canadian, whether you give her.
For 1 million Canadian dollars, how much do you weigh? In kilograms. Is it A, 40, B, 80,
I like this.
C, 65, D, 200?
Oh, I don't know kilograms.
Now remember, you can earn a bonus lifeline by listening to one Nickelback song in its entirety.
I think I'm gonna walk. Never accept substitutes for real maple syrup.
Whoa, you're not gonna use
Dude.
that crap, are you? Yeah? Tastes nothing like the real thing.
You should do Purge and
Mr.
GTA.
Russell, that's the third time this month. I'm gonna have to write you up for contraband.
Can't you just give me a warning?
Sorry.
20 hours of community curling? That's like my whole weekend.
And finally, know the difference between a good and a bad poutine.
Little boy, what seems to be the matter?
My poutine.
Your poutine? What's wrong with your poutine?
The gravy wasn't hot enough to melt my cheese curds.
Oh my God. I swear on the ghost of John A. MacDonald that we are going to find out who did this to you, and when we do, we are going to file a formal complaint.
What did we miss? Leave a comment in the comment section below, eh?
Nah, eh? 3 more true scary hospital stories.
Half in the night anyway. This was a guy who was showing serial killer symptoms, and I was told that he only needed extra care. So
So I used to be a CNA at a hospital in Missouri. Our general job description is to take vitals at specified times, document input and output, and then just help patients with whatever they need. But occasionally, we have to be a sitter for someone, which usually means the person is being crazy, or is on suicide watch and needs to have someone with them at all times. Being a youngish and relatively average-looking female, I've had my fair share of creepy and weird hospital patient stories. I've been bitten, kicked, groped, and all that. But this particular story is probably a moment that actually made me realize that people can be terrifying creatures. More background. The hospital I worked at was hit by a tornado in May 2011. And sometime after, our behavioral health facility was relocated to a much more secluded area, very close to the border of Missouri and Kansas, though only a few miles from town. I'm talking, you could see all the stars outside and hear coyotes in the distance. It seriously felt like the scene of a potential horror movie during my smoke breaks outside there. I worked overnights, and though I usually work cardiac, I was called over to behavioral health to be a sitter. I was a little creeped out just because of that. I remember thinking about what we would even do if the power went out and stuff, which actually did happen later, but I wasn't there. No one escaped, but all the doors auto-unlocked. I get to work, and upon receiving report on the patient, the daytime tech tells me this. I honestly don't even know why he needs a sitter. He's so nice and polite. He calls me ma'am and held the door open for me and stuff. He did sort of get into a fight with another patient, so that's why he has to have a sitter. But the other patient started it, and he isn't even here anymore. You're gonna have a pretty easy night, girl. So I sit next to the guy and try to relax. I honestly wasn't that worried about being in the men's area, because generally the women's ward is much more known for causing trouble and violent outbursts. Also, in Missouri, most patients are just bipolar or schizophrenic and off their meds, or drug addicts and people who admit themselves because they can't afford the help they need. And this guy was super nice. He was totally polite and asked about my tattoos. He enthusiastically showed me the bear he had tattooed on his arm and stuff like that. As time passed, the night continued to be relatively uneventful. And as bedtime came, around 9 p.m., the guy got into bed and went to sleep. In his room, I situated myself on the floor, in the corner near an outlet, so I could read my candle with my back against the wall. Keep in mind here that while I had worked in the hospital for a while, I had only worked in behavioral health one other time, and never really got the specific kind of training that the psych techs get. You're always supposed to walk behind your hands so your back is to no one, and such safety measures. We did have a lot of ones that clipped onto our scrubs, but they were apparently pretty flimsy, because when I took a lunch at 3 a.m.
Dude, that was so funny when he's like, my potatoes or whatever, no one cooked, and he's like, oh my god.
We will find whoever did this, and we will put.
So little Baymax, you can hire him as a hitman.
Nah, I'm listening to this. I'm listening to this. I'm supposed to be listening to this. Listen to this like horror thing.
Since he only needed a sitter for fighting some other dude, I wasn't really worried. The man is admitted because he kept threatening to murder his parents. That incidents kept escalating from him making telephone threats to bringing a gun to dinner with them, until finally they brought him in and he started moving corpses and violently slaughtered animals on his parents' doorstep. She told me a bunch of gun excised. A lot of crazy stuff happened during that visit, including being misdiagnosed with AIDS and flesh-eating bacteria. This is at one of the best hospitals in the USA. But this was by far the scariest thing that occurred during my stay. One night, about 3 a.m. I think, one of the nurses came in. I woke up because I had slept a lot that day, and the bright lights in the hall bothered me. It wasn't my normal male nurse, but an older woman, maybe mid to late 40s. I had never seen her before, and she looked very severe. She didn't acknowledge me at all when I greeted her and asked her questions. Just finally said, "Time for your medication," or something like that. She could respect that she didn't want to talk and just face forward again, because it hurt to move. I noticed that she had a much larger volume syringe than usual. My morphine dose was always given in a 10 to 20 cc syringe, but this thing was huge, like a 100 to 500 cc syringe, and the accuracy couldn't be that good. So I turned my head again and asked, trying to sound friendly and interested, what my message was.
Mi touches la dausa.
She had the right person. She ignored me. Continued. Because I think my dosage is supposed to be a lot lower. Would you mind double checking? She only said, "Go to sleep. This will be over soon." Injected the medication and left. I was kind of out of it. I was just so used to all this stuff going on around me, and I figured I was mistaken.
Charti guarmada. Ai mai guarma.
Pausa. I felt like something went wrong. I thought about kicking the IV, which would cause the alarm to go on and force the patient. But I just told myself to calm down and try to go back to sleep. They do this for a living anyway. It was probably just a change of nurse that was bothering me. So after a time, when I don't really know how much time, I started to feel more genuinely and undeniably weird. First, everything felt hot, or rather, hot on the outside. I had radiating heat from the surface of my skin everywhere, but cold on the inside of my skin. Around then, I started to notice that everything had turned a shade of red. It was all pulsing, with what I imagined was my heartbeat. So I'm staring at the ceiling in the dim. Everything I can see is through this red filter, pulsing slightly. I can feel goosebumps every inch of my body. Then, I feel nothing. I lose all sensation in my skin. I can still feel pressure, but I can't feel anything else, except intricate ripples across my body, as though I'm naked and the window is open. And eventually, even these fade. But they're a good example of the mental confusion that set in. For example, after a while, I couldn't even tell if my eyes were open or closed, if I was actually seeing, or just thinking I was seeing. When all sensation finally left me, I felt like I was floating 5 feet off the surface of the bed. I realize, as I'm testing my ability to sense things, that I'm having a hard time moving. Moving my hand or arm takes a concentrated effort. At this point, I simply managed to hit the call button, for which I am later grateful. Nothing feels emergent. The whole thing comes down to fuzziness, disrespect all the time I was playing and trying to move my hands or arms. Also, before I realized that I'm not actually looking at them. But nonetheless, gradually losing my ability to move anything at all. All the time I can barely move my wrists, not my arms or fingers, I start to feel concern. I realize at some deeper level in the back of my mind that the feeling I have in the pit of my stomach is clenching myself, and that this actually has the potential to be very dangerous. I want to hit the button again, or even call out, but I'm just too tired. My muscles won't move, and now I notice that the pulsing isn't as frequent as it was, though it was only upon reflection later that I fully realized the significance of it. So I kind of mentally slapped myself, instead of consciously focusing on breathing in and out. It felt like the nurses never responded, or what I would have guessed had been 25 to 35 minutes at least. But suddenly, as if in slow motion, it seemed like a lot of things happened at once. There had been a growing tension on me.
Damn it.
I flexed every muscle in my body. I would have been. I was fighting something very hard. And then my nurse came in. My male nurse, whom I had thought was out for the night. The moment I hear the door open, it coincides with a sudden release of all the heavy mass that had settled over me, like a soft, gooey blanket that wouldn't let me move. And suddenly, I sat up and projectile vomited into the bathroom, next to the nurse who was just walking in. Sorry, I know it's gross, but basically my body collected it and got rid of it. After that, I could finally move, and I could even speak after a few minutes. My nurse seemed relieved, to say the least. He cleaned it up and sat next to me and talked for a while. He said that another nurse had been trying to help him, mixed up the dosage, but he didn't seem to want to give much detail. It wasn't until years later that I thought I wasn't determined. I had been out of it for days, clearly in visible pain for some of it. I was the youngest person there. I wonder if it was just Ranger! That woman was an angel of death. I used morphine for the rest of my time there, and ever since, I wouldn't accept I'm a 28-year-old guy from England. Near the end of August, I was out with some friends in the mall to celebrate my birthday. And we decided it was time to go home, having been out for 8 hours at this point. We were up on the first floor of the bar. My friends went down the staircase to the main doors ahead of me. For reasons my advanced drunkenness is always I decided to try taking a shortcut off the stage next to the stairs instead. I'm guessing I just stepped off the stage thinking that it was a short jog to the ground. But it was closer to about 5 or 6 feet, and I hit the ground with my legs straight and my knees locked. Snap. I instantly knew something was serious. Came a 999 call and a surprisingly calm ambulance ride to the hospital after I was up with gas and air. At the hospital, they gave me an x-ray and discovered I'd broken both of my legs. And by this point, I had already sort of guessed. Your right foot pointing down instead of up is a pretty good indication. And my heart sank further when the attending doctor told me they'd have to admit me ahead of corrective surgery in the next couple of days. By now, they'd given me quite a bit of morphine, and I was still huffing gas and air like a champ, so I was fairly out of it. A porter wheeled me up to the ward and introduced me to a nurse, who explained that I was going to be put into the men's ward, as they'd had to separate genders the previous day into different rooms. I would have thought they'd do this anyway, but whatever. Even after the pain meds, I remember thinking it was a pretty weird thing to mention. My nurse set me up in my room, right by the ward entrance. My bed was one of 5 in there. It was next to the room shared toilet and shower room. It was around 5 a.m., and the entire place was quiet and dark. The nurse took me through all the admittance procedures. I could vaguely make out a guy in the bed opposite. To watch me being brought in. I couldn't see his face. The patch of wet hair on his head was catching fire. So I guessed he was which he was still sitting, almost like a statue. No moves, no noise, nothing. Just sitting there, time. Before the nurse left, I asked her to draw a curtain around me so I was shielded from view. Eventually, I drifted off to sleep. I woke up the next day to find my parents had been contacted and were sitting by my bed. Standing next to them was the guy from the bed opposite, chatting away like they'd known each other for years. I'm not exactly known as a people person, but given the obvious reasons, I was a bit touchy. I'll admit that I was annoyed that my parents were letting a total stranger stand right over me as conscious. Of course, they wanted to know if they'd cleared me out a little the night before. They introduced themselves. Color. Keen to talk with just about anything. He was in his early 70s, quite short and round. His manufactured his car in a farm. My parents told me he seemed to be that first day, my parents left. The doctors came around and picked me up in sprints before my surgery. The meeting parent got in the hospital and I won't be walking for a few months at least. During all these conversations, Mick lurked nearby, listening in. When the doctors left, Mick came to my bedside. He sat down in the chair next to me and asked me to repeat what the doctors had said.
What?
I wasn't in much of a mood to chat.
What
Because
the
I've got
fuck?
it into my head that he was harmless. I asked why he'd need to know, since he only stood a few feet away and must have heard
Damn it!
The second those words left my lips, his entire demeanor changed. The sweet old man that had been sitting in that chair was gone. His face went blank, flat. He fixed me with this weird stare, and one corner of his mouth moved into the wrong side. I'm not a many person. Conversations about death are way outside my wheelhouse. I stuttered, trying to find the appropriate words. I think I went with how sorry I was to hear that, and asked how long it had been. Given the odds, it had been a while. 3 weeks. Just like that. Gone. His face never changed the whole time. It dawned on me that maybe he wasn't totally mentally present at that point. He never broke eye contact either. Just looking at me. One of those things that just moves on a little bit too far. The nurses came in at that point to start me. Mick retreated back to his bed. I watched the TV the rest of the day. And I
What was...
so I had an excuse not to make any more conversation. Mick started to left me. There was more weirdness than I could deal with. Lights out came around. I asked the nurses to draw the curtains around my bed for me. Although I was still fighting a bit of pain, I broke off. I woke up in what had to have been one of those gradual awakenings where you know something's not quite right, but you can't work out what. The ward was almost totally dark and silent again, especially around the bed with the curtains drawn. I assumed the weird feeling was down to, being in the hospital with 2 epically shattered legs, and turned my head to the left onto the pillow. Then, I nearly rolled off the opposite side in shock. Standing there, inside of the drawn curtain right next to my bed, was Mick.
Oh my god.
He stood there, watching me.
What the
Dude,
fuck?
you had a shock. I said something stupid. This isn't where you sleep. Nothing. Same blank stare. Same creepy half smile. Barely a ruler length from my face. I thought he might have been sleepwalking, but he didn't have the glazed look to go with it. He seemed perfectly alert, just had to be still and observing me.
Wake up.
Mick, how long have you been there? That's when I got that special kind of chill you get when something really freaks you the fuck out. Rather than reply, he smiled really wide so I saw both rows of his teeth, then shuffled back around the curtain to his own bed. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. Because he never really left the room, and I certainly wasn't going anywhere. I didn't mention it to the nurses. I did text a few friends who were visiting the next day, and told them to watch out for him when they came through. He stayed away during their visit, and they said he seemed like a normal old man, which he did at that point. As the day went on, I decided I'd made more of it than I should have, and was just on edge because of what I had going on.
Now there probably is something wrong with him. Like, why the fuck would he be watching him sleeping?
I came to about 6 hours later to find myself hooked up to a morphine pump.
He's probably there for like 5 hours.
I was absolutely out of my tree high the entire evening. I was in such a good opium-filled mood. I totally forgot about me. Big mistake.
Big.
I got to the early hours again, and I was playing a game on my phone, oblivious. Because nurses were checking me every hour or so. They disturbed the curtains around my bed a lot as they came and went. The last nurse had left a gap about 6 inches wide where the curtains met, typically right in the part opposite Nick's bed. Nick was a very, very loud snorer, and so I was reassured by the noises coming from him that he was very much asleep. I got to assume because of the morphine, I stopped paying attention, and suddenly I realized that I couldn't hear the snoring anymore.
He woke up.
I couldn't remember how long it had been since I last heard of it. I looked at the gap between the curtains, couldn't make anything out. I was just about to go back to my game when, from just to the left of the gap, I heard my name being said. Not a normal way of saying it, not a whisper, more of a groan almost. Low and gravelly and menacing. I froze. I mean, what's the protocol when a pensioner has got out of bed in the middle of the night for the second night running to mess with you? I sat paralyzed, with this odd sense of vulnerability. I was immobile. I couldn't really confront him. I was stuck in my bed, heavy bandages and braces around both legs and hooked to an IV. I slowly moved my hand down from my phone to the call button for the nurses. Just as my hand reached it, the long groaning of my name stopped. So did my hand. Had he seen the picture mark and gone back to me? No, it was still there. About 30 seconds passed, presumably the length of time it took him to be comfortable that I wasn't going to press the button. Then came the heavy breathing. Long, rasping intakes of air, followed by extended groans to expel it. Over and over and over, right at the foot of my bed. That was my night. I hit the call button and the light went on above my bed. I heard the buzzer sound down the hallway of the nurse's station. There was a burst of movement behind my curtains, and I heard the nearby toilet door quickly open and closed. Not afterwards, the nurse responded to the call. Meg was still in the toilet, but because it was close by, I beckoned the nurse nearer so I could whisper. I told her what had happened about the previous night, and asked if something could be done. She nodded and said she'd be right back. While she was gone, Mick emerged from the toilet, and I heard him climb back into his bed. Thankfully, the nurse had fully closed my curtains, so at least he couldn't see me now. An hour passed, and eventually the nurse returned. I was expecting to be moved elsewhere, but instead she told me that I couldn't have a snippet of being on morphine. I tried my best not to be impolite, and calmly told her that I didn't ask for a pill. I asked for something to be done about what had happened. The last thing I wanted was to deliberately knock myself unconscious with more meds. She sort of shrugged, half explained that all the wards were full, and disappeared again, telling me to get some rest. I didn't sleep for hours. Mick's snoring eventually resumed, and the day finally caught up with me, so I cautiously allowed myself to drift off. The next morning, everything seemed normal again. Mick made small talk, which I didn't really respond to, and eventually left me alone. That afternoon, a guy younger than me was admitted with a broken leg. This guy was 18, but looked about 12. It was ridiculous. Mick didn't seem to think so, because suddenly this guy was the focus of all his attention. I felt sorry for the fresh meat, but grateful that I might be able to relax now. That night, I slept pretty well.
Bro, what does he have against people? His targets are only people with...
a weird sensation on my left foot, the toes of which were
His target's only kids.
No, his target is people's that, like, 18-year-olds, that their legs don't work. So that way they're an easy target.
Running his fingers along them,
Maybe he needs a new pair of legs.
moving them around. Like
What?
he wanted me to wake up and see what he was doing. We're still in the toilet.
What?
But because
Hold
we're
on.
close,
He was touching his feet.
Mick didn't seem to think so, because suddenly this guy was the focus of all his attention. I felt sorry for the fresh meat, but grateful that I might be able to relax.
Dude, that's messed
That
up.
night, I slept
I know.
until about 3 a.m. Woke to a weird sensation in my left foot. The toes of which were poking out the top of my ear.
Listen.
My eyes adjusted to the darkness, and I saw Mick again stood inside my drawn curtains, playing with my toes, running his fingers along them, pinching them, moving them around, like he'd wanted me to wake up and see what he was doing, but not looking at them, looking me dead in the eyes, unblinking, grinning. I'd like to say that I lost my shit with him, called the nurses in and had him moved elsewhere. The mind's a weird thing, so I didn't. I just sat open mouthed and watched him and kept moving my toes around. I think it was disbelief that kept me quiet, mixed with fear. He might have had more than 40 years on me, but I was trapped in that bed and totally at his mercy, so I didn't want to do anything to piss him off. Eventually he seemed to get tired of messing with me and disappeared behind the curtains back into his own bed. For obvious reasons, I sat awake the rest of the night, watching and waiting for him to show his face again, but he didn't. Every now and then, I heard my name groaned low and long. By morning, I was a mixture of furious and terrified. I'm not the kind of person who assumes the role of victim very often, and so I hated how easily this old man had reduced me to a paranoid wreck. Every time he got up to stretch his legs or get some water, my entire body went rigid, expecting him to come back to my bedside. He didn't, going back to devote all his creepy attention to the new guy again. That afternoon, Mick was called away for a scan, so I finally had some time to speak to the 3 other guys in the room about what had happened. None of them had any idea about Mick's nightly visits, since they were dosed up on pain meds themselves. One of the guys had been there longer than I had, though, and he had been around when the wards were divided by gender. I asked him what had happened, and he responded that he wasn't totally sure. He just knew that something had happened during the night, and the next morning, men and women were in separate wards. For obvious reasons, I had a pretty good idea of what that something might have been. When Mick got back, he glumly announced that he'd been cleared to go home, and had an ambulance booked to take him there in an hour or two. He started making his way around the ward, saying goodbye to everyone. He left me until last. He'll look after those legs in the future. They're fragile things. I half smiled, and because I'm crippled with English politeness, told him I hoped he'd feel better soon. Assuming the interaction was done and I'd finally seen the last of him, I picked up a magazine and started reading. No sooner had I done that, I felt a pressure around my left foot. I looked up and was about to yell out until I saw what Mick was doing. His hand was clamped around my foot, squeezing it so hard that his knuckles had gone white. Thankfully, the break on the left was further up. And that stare was back. Vacant, but intense, with a creepy half-smile. Before I could respond, his mouth opened, and out came that same raspy voice I'd heard saying my name in the night. Very, very fragile. He let go of my foot, turned around and shuffled back to his bed to pack. A couple hours after that, he was gone. I did fill the nurses in before I was discharged, but none of them seemed to care all that much, dismissing what I'd experienced as either partly drug-induced or just misinterpreted. What's up, guys? No Spooky here, as always. I just wanted to thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end of the video. If you guys liked the video, possibly leave a like or share if you feel so inclined. If you have a personal story that you'd like to send in, or story...
Battle simulation commenced. Attack deployed. Defense initiated.
Say that they can remember it happening at around...
The Tattered Spectre by Lone Ranger. Ever since I was 6 years old, I've lived in eastern Virginia, in a town called Williamsburg. It's just up the road from the original Jamestown settlement, and smack dab in between the state capital, Richmond, and the largest naval base in the world. Norfolk Williamsburg is already a major hotspot of tourist activity, but it's helped by the fact that Williamsburg is one of the oldest towns in the state, possibly in the country. It has a lot of the original buildings and architecture still intact, even after hundreds of years. And banking on this, the town's tourist industry is centered around an area known as Colonial Williamsburg, filled with lots of 18th century buildings, and people walking around dressed as if the American Revolution had only been won yesterday. It's actually very interesting. There are plenty of fun mini-histories that go with the buildings, in addition to the area's overall historical value. Now, as with many old places, Williamsburg has its fair share of ghost stories. Some buildings are said to have had literal skeletons in their closets, while some are the sites of brutal deaths. And over the decades, people have reported seeing various phantoms and spirits haunt the area. I don't know if the encounter I had was with a ghost or an entity, or if it had anything to do with the fact that I live in an area known for being haunted. But a few years back, I had an experience that totally boggled my mind. My family used to take walks around the neighborhood. The main portion of it is just a giant loop, so it was very convenient for a short evening walk. I was probably about 14 years old. And one evening, my sister and I went with my mom for a walk around the loop. Only around a block and a half away from where we lived, I stopped in front of a neighbor's house and told my mom and sister to walk ahead of me. For the past several years, one of our cats, named Brutus, had been living in their yard because they kept leaving out treats and extra food for him, even though we asked him not to so he would come back. He was getting pretty old and this helped his family. We didn't see much of him at our house, but often we walked past theirs, and he'd come out from their side yard and greet us with a friendly purring and meowing. I wanted to see if he'd come out. I watched my sister and mom walk away for a few moments, and then I turned back to look and see if Brutus had come out. I was shocked to see something hovering near the upper left corner of my neighbor's garage door. I've always had a hard time thinking of how to describe what it was. It was very, very bright, though the light seemed to be contained within itself, and it had lots of tendrils and ragged extensions billowing outward in slow motion. It looked almost like a shining orb of maybe hair, or even a torn and frayed dress, like the kind an old doll might have worn, but whatever it was tattered and bright. I stepped closer a few times, and accordingly it got larger in my perspective, and I saw it begin to slowly move in an upward direction, toward the right. And there was still a lot of light out, so it wasn't as if the darkness was playing tricks on my vision, and I must have averted my gaze to look at my family farther down the street at least half a dozen times. Yet every time I looked back, that tattered orb was still hovering and moving in the same direction. For whatever reason, I didn't call out to my family, and I started to walk closer to the object. Something in the back of my mind told me, no, just leave it alone. After a solid minute, I decided to keep walking in order to catch up with my mom and sister. I walked slowly, looking back every few seconds to see if the orb was still there. Sure enough, it never disappeared, and I kept looking back until we finally rounded a corner and I lost sight of the house. Since then, I've walked down that same street many times, in every season and at every time of day, but never once have I seen that orb, or anything remotely similar to it. It wasn't a particularly significant, frightening, or exciting experience, I know. But it definitely left me puzzled. Not entirely sure what I'd seen, or if it had any importance in any way. More for my personal curiosity than anything else. If anyone has had a similar experience, or seen a similar object, I'd be very interested to hear your story, and see if it can shed any light onto mine.
Blink by Ham Slam. I'm tired of keeping quiet and having it rack my brain trying to figure out what the fuck happened. A bit of history first, though. I was always an odd child, even as a baby.
I'm gonna go make an account. I'm gonna go make our YouTube account for PlayStation, so I'll be right back.
That have just become my everyday. But there is one
I'm gonna make us a
that
PlayStation
constantly
account.
sits in the back of my mind.
So I'll see you. I'll be right
I've
back.
exhausted every logical explanation I can think of, or think of researching. The earliest I can remember of this strange thing happening is probably at 4 years old. Although, whenever I've questioned my family about it, they say that they can remember it happening at around 6 months old. Kids that was curious about everything and got into anything I'd be told not to. I would always appear or be found in random places. Places that I either clearly could not have gotten into, or places where I wasn't left. But at 4 years old, I remembered that I would blink, feel like my body weighed nothing, like my mind and senses had been turned off, and then appear in some random place not too far away. I thought that everyone could do the same thing, and thought nothing of it, until I steadily got older. Many times I would blink, and suddenly be on top of a
How to delete PS accounts.
counter or in a cupboard. I'd get scared and start crying. Then I'd be reprimanded when I couldn't explain how I was just in the other room or in the living room, and now suddenly I was somewhere else. I thought I would be in trouble for doing it without any knowledge or control. My parents were very disturbed, because when they would find me in these high places, there would be nothing around me to have climbed on to get to where I was.
Okay, so sorry I have to use an off-screen recording on this one because Sony has not updated their the PlayStation 4 yet to where you could disable the HDCH. So someone has asked me how do you delete PlayStation 4 accounts or accounts on PlayStation 4? In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. Basically, as you can see on here, you can log out of the PlayStation 4. And you can't really do much. You can only add new user. But if you go right into here, let's say if you sign into one of the accounts, and if you go into the setting, down here has all these settings that you go to. What you want to do is go all the way to the bottom to where it says initialization. On top, clear learning dictionary, restore default, delete user. Right in here. You can press X on that, and then you can choose whichever all the way to the bottom to where it says initialization.
Okay.
Top, clear learning dictionary, restore default, delete user. Right in here. You can